My name is Riley, and I'm 34 years old. I'm a single mom to two beautiful daughters, Emma, who's 8, and Sophie, who's 5. Standing outside the family courthouse on that cold November Monday morning, clutching my worn handbag, with trembling hands, I never imagined I'd find myself here. Through the glass doors, I could see my ex-husband Daniel with his expensive lawyer, both of them looking confident and prepared. Meanwhile, I had nothing but a folder of papers I'd organized myself and a heart full of determination. He thought I would crumble without money or legal support. He was wrong. Before I share what happened in that courtroom, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button if you've ever felt like David facing Goliath. And don't forget to subscribe, because this story will show you that a mother's love truly is the strongest force on earth. Now let me take you back to where this nightmare began. 2 years after my divorce from Daniel, life had finally found its rhythm. Every morning started the same way. I'd wake up at 6:30, make breakfast for Emma and Sophie, pack their lunches with little notes tucked inside, and drive them to school in my old Honda Civic. The car made strange noises, but it got us where we needed to go. After dropping them off, I'd head to Sullivan's Bakery, where I worked part-time. Mrs. Sullivan had been incredibly understanding about my schedule, letting me work mornings so I could pick up the girls after school. The pay wasn't much, but combined with the child support Daniel sent monthly, we managed. Our small 2-bedroom apartment wasn't fancy. The walls were thin, the kitchen faucet dripped, and the heating bill made me wince every winter. But it was ours. Evenings were my favorite time. We'd sit at our little kitchen table doing homework together. Sophie would practice writing her letters while Emma worked on math problems. After dinner, we'd curl up on our second-hand couch for movie nights, sharing a bowl of popcorn and laughing at animated films we'd seen dozens of times. Money was always tight. I'd clip coupons, shop sales, and sometimes we'd have pancakes for dinner because groceries ran low before payday. But the girls never complained. They understood Mommy worked hard, and they appreciated the simple pleasures. Saturday morning pancakes became our tradition. Sunday afternoons, we'd go to the park, pack a lunch, and pretend we were having grand adventures. Then Daniel reappeared. It was a Tuesday in October when he knocked on our door. I hadn't seen him in months beyond brief exchanges during his scheduled visitation weekends. He looked different, his clothes were expensive, his car was brand new, and he carried himself with a confidence that made me uncomfortable. "Riley," he said, flashing that smile I once fell for, "I've been thinking about us, about our family." He'd just returned from a 3-month business trip to California. Apparently, his consulting firm had landed several major contracts. He spoke about second chances, about how he'd changed, about wanting to provide better for Emma and Sophie. The way he looked at our modest apartment, taking in the mismatched furniture and peeling wallpaper, made my skin crawl. "The girls deserve more than this," he said, gesturing around our living room. "I can give them private schools, nice clothes, a real house with a backyard." I remembered why I'd left him. It wasn't just about money or status. During our marriage, Daniel had been controlling, critical, and emotionally distant. He'd make decisions without consulting me, dismiss my opinions, and use financial pressure to get his way. When Emma was a baby and I'd wanted to breastfeed, he'd insisted on formula because it was more convenient for his schedule. When Sophie was born, he'd hired a nanny without asking because he didn't want crying to disturb his work calls. "We're fine as we are," I told him firmly. "The girls are happy, healthy, and loved." His expression shifted. The charming smile disappeared, replaced by something colder. "Think about what's best for them, Riley. Think about what you can actually provide versus what I can offer." After he left, I double-locked the door and checked on both girls. They were sleeping peacefully, unaware of the storm that was brewing. Over the next few weeks, Daniel's behavior became increasingly demanding. Our divorce decree clearly outlined his visitation schedule: every other weekend and 1 evening per week. But suddenly that wasn't enough. He'd call asking to pick up the girls early, stay late during returns, or request additional weekdays. When I reminded him of our agreement, he'd become argumentative. "Things change, Riley. I'm in a better position now to spend time with my daughters." The girls started coming home from his visits with expensive toys and clothes that seemed designed to highlight what I couldn't afford. Emma returned with a tablet one weekend. Sophie came back wearing designer shoes that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. "Daddy says we might get to live in his big house soon," Emma mentioned casually while we were doing dishes. My blood ran cold. "What big house, sweetheart?" "The one with the pool and the playroom. He showed us pictures." Sophie nodded enthusiastically. "Daddy says Mommy's apartment is too small for growing girls." I realized Daniel was systematically undermining me. During his visits, he was planting seeds of discontent, making our home seem inadequate compared to his newfound wealth. When the girls asked why we didn't have nice things like Daddy, my heart broke a little more each time. Then came the formal letter from his attorney. It arrived on a Thursday morning, delivered by certified mail. Legal letterhead, official language, and a list of concerns about my parenting capabilities. The letter cited my financial limitations, my work schedule that required after-school care, and what they termed inconsistent supervision. They referenced an incident from 2 months earlier when Emma had fallen off her bicycle and scraped her knee. I'd cleaned the wound, applied a bandage, and monitored it carefully until it healed. Somehow, this became evidence of inadequate safety measures in their letter. The document concluded with a thinly veiled threat. Daniel's attorney suggested that unless we could reach an amicable agreement regarding increased custody arrangements, they might need to pursue legal remedies to ensure the children's welfare. I couldn't afford a lawyer. The consultation fees alone were beyond my budget, and legal aid had a waiting list months long. Daniel knew this. He was counting on my financial vulnerability to force me into submission. The stress began affecting everything. I'd lie awake at night, mind racing through worst-case scenarios. I lost weight because anxiety killed my appetite. At work, Mrs. Sullivan noticed I was distracted and asked if everything was okay. I couldn't bring myself to explain that my ex-husband was systematically dismantling my life. The girls sensed the tension too. Emma started asking why I seemed sad all the time. Sophie began having trouble sleeping, crawling into my bed in the middle of the night. I tried to shield them from my worry, but children are perceptive. Our small community began talking. Daniel had always been charming and persuasive. He started appearing at school events, volunteering for activities he'd never shown interest in before. Other parents saw his expensive car, his generous donations to fundraisers, and his suddenly active involvement. Some began questioning whether the girls might indeed be better off with their father full-time. I felt increasingly isolated. My work schedule made it difficult to maintain friendships. My parents lived across the country and couldn't offer practical support. The few close friends I had were dealing with their own struggles and couldn't fully understand the legal complexities I was facing. Daniel was building a case, and I was walking into his trap, completely unprepared. The bomb finally dropped on a rainy Monday in late November. I was getting ready for work when someone knocked on the door. A court officer handed me official papers with an apologetic expression. "Ms. Henderson, you've been served." My hands shook as I read the petition. Daniel was seeking full custody of Emma and Sophie, not increased visitation, not joint custody, full primary custody with me relegated to supervised weekend visits. The allegations were devastating. According to the legal documents, I was an unfit mother who couldn't provide adequate financial support, stable housing, or proper supervision. The papers claimed my work schedule created an unsafe environment where children were left in inconsistent care arrangements. Every small incident from the past 2 years had been twisted into evidence against me. Emma's bicycle accident became proof of negligent supervision. A time when Sophie had gotten a mild cold became evidence of inadequate health care. My financial struggles, which I'd worked so hard to manage responsibly, were painted as chaotic instability. The most crushing allegation was emotional neglect. Daniel's lawyers claimed that my financial stress and work demands prevented me from meeting the girls' emotional needs. They had somehow obtained school records showing Emma's grades had dipped slightly during a particularly challenging period when I'd been working extra hours to cover an unexpected car repair. The court date was set for 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to somehow mount a legal defense against a man with unlimited resources and a team of expensive attorneys. I called every lawyer in town. The consultations alone would cost hundreds of dollars I didn't have. Those willing to work on payment plans wanted retainers of $5,000 or more. Legal aid was backed up for months, and this case was too urgent for their timeline. That night, after putting the girls to bed, I sat at my kitchen table and cried harder than I had since my divorce. The papers spread before me looked like a foreign language. Terms like custodial modification and best interests of the minor children swam before my eyes. Emma appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Mommy, why are you crying?" I quickly wiped my tears and forced a smile. "Just some grown-up stuff, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." She climbed into my lap, something she'd been doing less frequently as she got older. "Are you scared about something?" Out of the mouths of babes. I was terrified. Terrified of losing my daughters. Terrified of failing them. terrified of a legal system I didn't understand and couldn't afford to navigate properly. Sometimes grown-ups get scared too, I admitted. But everything will be okay. As I carried Emma back to bed, Sophie stirred and mumbled, "I love you, Mommy." "I love you too, baby girl." Standing in their doorway, watching my daughters sleep peacefully, something shifted inside me. Fear began transforming into determination. These weren't just custody papers. This was a declaration of war against my family, and Daniel had severely underestimated his opponent. I might not have money, but I had something he'd never understood. I had a mother's love, and I was about to discover just how powerful that could be. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the public library. If I couldn't afford a lawyer, I'd have to become one. I spent the next 8 hours researching family law custody procedures and court protocols. Mrs. Patterson, the librarian, noticed me surrounded by legal books and offered to help. She'd been through her own custody battle years earlier and understood the overwhelming nature of legal research. She showed me how to access online databases and helped me understand court filing procedures. I learned that family courts prioritize the children's best interests above all else. Stability, emotional bonds, and consistent care matter more than financial resources. I began documenting everything: Emma's perfect attendance at school, Sophie's developmental milestones, their medical records showing consistent health care, photos of birthday parties, school events, and quiet moments at home. I reached out to their teachers requesting written statements about the girls' emotional well-being and academic progress. Mrs. Rodriguez, Emma's third-grade teacher, was immediately supportive. She'd noticed how Emma lit up when talking about our movie nights and weekend adventures. "That little girl adores you," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "It's obvious in everything she does. Her drawings are always about family activities with Mommy." Sophie's daycare provider, Miss Janet, agreed to provide documentation about Sophie's adjustment and happiness. She mentioned how Sophie would proudly show off the lunch notes I packed every day and how she'd talk excitedly about helping Mommy cook dinner. I contacted Mrs. Sullivan at the bakery, asking for an employment verification letter. She went above and beyond, writing about my reliability, work ethic, and how I'd never missed picking up the girls on time, despite managing multiple responsibilities. The research revealed Daniel's weaknesses too. During our marriage, he'd traveled constantly for work. Business trips that lasted weeks, client dinners that kept him out until midnight, weekend conferences that took priority over family time. I gathered old calendars and travel receipts that demonstrated his pattern of absence. I discovered that courts look unfavorably on parents who suddenly seek custody after years of minimal involvement. Daniel's new interest in full-time parenting would seem suspicious, especially when compared to his historical pattern of prioritizing work over family. Financial stability wasn't just about income levels. Courts wanted to see responsible money management and meeting children's needs consistently. I gathered bank statements showing regular savings deposits, even if small, receipts for music lessons, soccer registration, and school supplies, evidence that despite limited resources, I prioritized the girls' activities and needs. Most importantly, I prepared to represent myself in court. I practiced speaking clearly and confidently, researched proper courtroom etiquette, and organized evidence into logical presentations. Other single mothers in town began offering support once word spread about my situation. Sarah, whose ex-husband had tried similar tactics 2 years earlier, shared her experience and offered to testify about my character. Linda, a nurse who'd observed my interactions with the girls during Sophie's medical checkups, volunteered to speak about my attentive parenting. I was building an army of truth to counter Daniel's army of money. The night before the hearing, I laid out my best outfit: a simple navy dress I'd bought for job interviews paired with low heels and minimal jewelry. I wanted to look professional and responsible without appearing to try too hard. Emma found me pressing the dress and asked what tomorrow was. I'd explained that Mommy had an important meeting about our family, but kept details age-appropriate. "Are you nervous?" she asked with the intuition children possess. "A little," I admitted, "but I'm fighting for something really important." "What's that?" "You and Sophie, always you and Sophie." November 28th, the day that would determine my daughter's future. I woke up at 5 in the morning, stomach churning with anxiety. The courthouse didn't open until 8, but I couldn't sleep. I made coffee with shaking hands and reviewed my notes one final time. Every document was organized in colored folders: character witness statements in blue, financial records in green, school and medical records in yellow, My opening and closing statements were printed on index cards to prevent my nerves from causing me to forget important points. At 7:15, I kissed sleeping Emma and Sophie goodbye. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, had agreed to get them ready for school and stay until I returned. I whispered promises to their peaceful faces that Mommy would fight for them with everything she had. The courthouse parking lot was nearly empty when I arrived. Daniel's sleek Mercedes was already there, parked prominently near the entrance. Through my rearview mirror, I watched him emerge with two men in expensive suits. His legal team looked like they'd stepped from a corporate boardroom. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, gathering courage. My reflection in the mirror showed a woman who looked older than 34, stress lines around her eyes, but also a determination I'd never seen before. Inside the courthouse, security guards checked my folder, while Daniel's lawyers wheeled in boxes of documents. The difference was stark. They had resources. I had truth. In the waiting area outside the courtroom, Daniel's primary attorney approached me. Mr. Westbrook was tall, silver-haired, and radiated the confidence that comes with charging $500 per hour. "Henderson," he said with a patronizing smile, "my client is willing to consider a generous settlement. Joint custody with primary residence with Mr. Henderson, and you'd receive every other weekend, plus one evening per week. Given your financial circumstances, this is quite reasonable." It was exactly the opposite of our current arrangement. Daniel would become the primary parent while I'd be relegated to visitor status in my daughter's lives. "No, thank you," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Mr. Westbrook's expression shifted slightly. He hadn't expected immediate rejection. "Ms. Henderson, I should mention that custody battles can be quite expensive. Are you certain you want to proceed without representation?" The threat was clear. This could cost me everything even if I won, but losing my daughters would cost me more than everything. It would cost me my reason for living. "I'm certain," I said. At 9 o'clock sharp, we entered the courtroom. Judge Patricia Morrison presided, a woman in her 50s, with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. I'd researched her background. 20 years on the family court bench with a reputation for fairness and a particular sensitivity to children's welfare. Daniel sat at the plaintiff's table with his legal team, looking confident and polished in his designer suit. I sat alone at the defendant's table, my folder of documents looking small and insignificant compared to their boxes of materials. "This is a petition for custodial modification," Judge Morrison began. "Mr. Henderson seeks primary custody of the minor children Emma and Sophie Henderson. Ms. Henderson, I see you're representing yourself today." "Yes, Your Honor." "Are you sure you don't want to request a continuance to secure legal representation?" "I'm sure, Your Honor. I'm ready to proceed." Mr. Westbrook presented Daniel's case first. He painted a picture of a successful father who'd overcome past mistakes and was now in an ideal position to provide for his children. Charts showed Daniel's increased income, photographs displayed his new house with its spacious bedrooms and backyard, and documents outlined his ability to pay for private schools and extracurricular activities. When they discussed my situation, the language was devastating. Financially unstable single mother struggling to meet basic needs. Inconsistent childcare arrangements due to work demands. Limited resources affecting children's opportunities and development. Daniel took the stand, speaking eloquently about his love for Emma and Sophie and his desire to give them every advantage in life. He expressed concern about my ability to provide adequate supervision and cited examples of incidents that worried him. "Your Honor, I'm not trying to remove the children from their mother entirely," he said, with practiced sincerity. "I simply believe they deserve the stability and opportunities I can now provide." During cross-examination, I had no lawyer to question him, but I could ask questions myself. My hands trembled as I approached the witness stand, but I remembered all those nights researching, all those hours preparing. "Mr. Henderson," I began, "how many school conferences did you attend during the 2022 to 2023 school year?" He paused, clearly not expecting specific questions. "I'm not sure of the exact number." "The answer is 0. How many soccer games did you attend for Emma that same year?" "I was traveling frequently for work." "How many bedtime stories did you read to Sophie in the month before filing this petition?" Mr. Westbrook objected, claiming the questions were irrelevant, but Judge Morrison allowed them. She was clearly interested in hearing about actual involvement versus financial capability. By the time Daniel stepped down, his composure had cracked slightly. The contrast between his claims of devoted fatherhood and the reality of his limited involvement was becoming apparent. When my turn came to present my case, something remarkable happened. All those weeks of preparation, all that research, all those sleepless nights had led to this moment, and I was ready. I stood before Judge Morrison and spoke from my heart while staying grounded in facts. I presented documentation of Emma's academic progress, Sophie's developmental milestones, and both girls' emotional well-being. I showed photographs of birthday parties I'd organized, school projects we'd completed together, and quiet moments of daily life. Mrs. Rodriguez took the stand as my first character witness. Her testimony was powerful and detailed. She described Emma as a confident, happy child who spoke constantly about her mother with love and respect. She mentioned how Emma had written a Mother's Day essay describing me as her hero because I worked hard to take care of our family. In 20 years of teaching, Mrs. Rodriguez said, I can recognize when a child feels secure and loved. Emma Henderson is one of those children. Miss Janet from Sophie's daycare provided similar testimony. She spoke about Sophie's adjustment, her social development, and the obvious bond between mother and daughter evidenced in daily interactions. Sophie talks about helping her mommy cook dinner, reading stories together, and their weekend adventures to the park, Miss Janet testified. These aren't just activities, they're the foundation of a secure attachment. My employment verification from Mrs. Sullivan went beyond basic job details. She testified about my reliability work ethic and how I'd successfully managed my responsibilities while never compromising my children's needs. Riley has never missed picking up her daughters on time, Miss Sullivan said. Not once in 2 years. She's asked for time off for every school event, every medical appointment, every important moment in their lives. The most powerful moment came when I presented evidence of Daniel's historical absence during our marriage. Old calendars showing business trips that lasted weeks. Credit card statements from expensive client dinners while I was home alone with infant Emma, travel receipts, proving he'd missed birthdays and holidays for work commitments. Your Honor, I said, finding strength in my voice I didn't know existed. Financial resources don't create loving relationships. Consistency does, presence does, putting children's needs first, even when it's inconvenient, does. I presented our daily routine, our homework sessions, our movie nights, our Saturday morning pancake tradition, simple moments that created the foundation of my daughter's security and happiness. Mr. Henderson can offer private schools and expensive activities, I continued, but Emma and Sophie already have what children need most. They have a mother who knows Emma prefers strawberry jelly to grape, who knows Sophie needs her stuffed rabbit to fall asleep, who knows when they're getting sick before symptoms appear, because I'm present for every day of their lives. During Daniel's rebuttal, his true nature finally emerged. Frustrated by the direction of proceedings, his carefully controlled demeanor slipped. When Judge Morrison asked about his long-term commitment to hands-on parenting, he became defensive and argumentative. I've worked hard to provide financial security, he snapped. That should count for something. Of course it does, Judge Morrison replied calmly. But this court needs to understand your vision for daily parenting responsibilities. I'll hire qualified childcare providers to handle routine tasks. The courtroom fell silent. In one sentence, Daniel had revealed his fundamental misunderstanding of parenthood. He saw daily care as tasks to be outsourced, rather than the precious opportunity to build relationships with his children. I presented my final piece of evidence. Emma's school journal entry from the previous week, written as part of an assignment about family traditions. In her 8-year-old handwriting, she'd described our Saturday morning pancakes, how we'd laugh and tell stories, and how these moments made her feel safe and happy and loved. Sophie had drawn a picture during daycare that same week, 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. When Miss Janet had asked who was in the picture, Sophie had said, "Me and Emma and Mommy, we're a family." Judge Morrison studied both pieces of evidence carefully. Then she looked directly at me. Ms. Henderson, this court has heard testimony about financial limitations that create genuine challenges for your family. How do you respond to concerns about providing opportunities for enrichment activities, educational advantages, and material security? This was my moment. Everything I'd learned, everything I'd prepared for, came down to this answer. Your Honor, I won't pretend that money doesn't matter. Of course I want my daughters to have opportunities and advantages. But the most important foundation for any child is feeling unconditionally loved and securely attached to their primary caregiver. Emma and Sophie have that with me. They know that no matter what challenges we face, Mommy will be there fighting for them, protecting them, putting their needs first. I paused, looking at Daniel across the courtroom. Mr. Henderson can provide material advantages, and I respect that. But he cannot provide 2 years of bedtime stories, homework, help-scraped knee kisses, and daily proof that his children are the center of his world. That's what I offer. That's what Emma and Sophie deserve to keep. Judge Morrison nodded slowly and called for a brief recess to review all evidence and testimony. During the 30-minute recess, I sat alone in the hallway while Daniel's legal team huddled in confident discussion. My phone buzzed with text messages from Mrs. Sullivan, Mrs. Chen, and several other friends asking how things were going. I couldn't bring myself to respond. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. A court clerk called us back inside at 2:30 in the afternoon. Judge Morrison had returned with her decision, and the atmosphere in the courtroom felt charged with anticipation. After careful consideration of all evidence and testimony presented today, Judge Morrison began. This court finds that a modification of the current custody arrangement is not in the best interests of the minor children. My heart stopped. Those words meant I'd won, but I needed to hear the complete ruling to believe it. While Mr. Henderson has demonstrated improved financial resources and the ability to provide material advantages, the judge continued, the evidence shows that the children are thriving in their current environment. Ms. Henderson has proven herself to be a dedicated, attentive parent who has successfully prioritized her children's emotional, physical, and developmental needs despite financial challenges. Judge Morrison looked directly at Daniel. Mr. Henderson, this court encourages your continued involvement in your daughter's lives. However, your petition for primary custody is denied. The current arrangement will remain in place with Ms. Henderson maintaining primary custody. She then addressed the visitation schedule. Due to concerns raised about consistency and communication, this court orders that all future visitation will strictly adhere to the established schedule. Any modifications must be requested through proper legal channels with adequate notice. The gavel came down with a sound that felt like freedom. Daniel's face flushed red with anger and disbelief. Mr. Westbrook began gathering papers with obvious frustration, clearly unused to losing cases. Daniel stood abruptly, his composure completely gone. "This is ridiculous," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "She can barely afford to feed them properly." "Mr. Henderson," Judge Morrison said sternly, "you will maintain appropriate courtroom decorum or face contempt charges." But the damage was done. In that moment of uncontrolled anger, Daniel had shown everyone present exactly who he really was. Not a loving father concerned about his children's welfare, but a man who couldn't accept that money doesn't automatically equal superiority. I sat in stunned silence as the reality sank in. Emma and Sophie were staying with me. Our little family would remain intact. All those sleepless nights, all that research, all those moments of terror and doubt had led to this victory. Outside the courthouse, several people who testified on my behalf were waiting. Mrs. Rodriguez hugged me with tears in her eyes. Miss Janet smiled and said she'd never doubted the outcome. Mrs. Sullivan had closed the bakery early to come support me. "I knew you'd win," she said. "Anyone with eyes could see how much you love those girls." That afternoon, I picked up Emma and Sophie from school as usual. They climbed into my old Honda Civic, chattering about their day, completely unaware that their entire future had been secured that morning. "How was your important meeting, Mommy?" Emma asked as we drove home. "It went very well, sweetheart. Everything is going to be just fine." That evening, we had our regular dinner around our little kitchen table. Afterwards, we curled up on our secondhand couch for movie night, sharing popcorn and laughing at a story we'd seen countless times before. But everything felt different now. The anxiety that had consumed me for weeks was gone, replaced by a profound sense of peace and strength I'd never experienced before. I'd walked into that courtroom terrified and walked out transformed. Looking at my daughters safe and happy in our modest but love-filled home, I realized something profound. I'd spent so much energy worrying about what I couldn't give them that I'd almost lost sight of what I could provide. Security, consistency, unconditional love, a mother who would fight heaven and earth to protect them. Daniel had underestimated the power of a mother's love, and that miscalculation had cost him everything he'd tried to take from us. I learned that day that a mother's love isn't just an emotion, it's a force of nature. Money can buy lawyers and create impressive presentations, but it can't manufacture the bond between a mother and her children. It can't replicate years of bedtime stories, homework sessions, and quiet moments that build the foundation of trust and security. The greatest victories in life don't always come from having the most resources. Sometimes they come from having the most heart, the most determination, and the most love. If you're facing your own impossible battle right now, remember this: you're stronger than you think. Love always finds a way to win, and sometimes the most important fights are worth every moment of fear and uncertainty. Have you ever had to fight for something that mattered more than anything else in the world? How did you find the courage to keep going when everything seemed impossible? Share your story in the comments below, because your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched your heart or gave you hope, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about real people overcoming real challenges. And please share this video with someone who might need to remember that love really is the strongest force on earth. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that no matter what you're facing, you have more strength inside you than you know.